All right, everybody. I'm here with my good friend Steve White. We're over at the Killer Instinct booth. We'll show you guys what we got in store from Killer Instinct in 2025. All right, welcome back, everyone. This will be the last update from ATA 2025, and this is what you guys have been asking about a bunch, and for good reason, because this optic from Killer Instinct is super cool. So let me introduce you to CERTIS, and I apologize, you guys. I'm obviously no longer at ATA. I wanted to do this review for you guys, or this overview at ATA, but truth be told, this optic was getting a lot of attention. You guys can see it mounted here, on just the rail and stock portion of a Logix. That thing was flying around all over the place. I was demoing it. Steve was demoing it. Many other people were testing it and trying it out. There really wasn't a great opportunity for me to step in and film a video. So we're going to do this here. I'm sharing my screen. I've got just a photo that I took of CERTIS while we were at ATA. I also got the website up, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth. I can draw on some stuff just to give you guys an overview and explain how this works, and just kind of what you guys can expect from it. So first, starting out, CERTIS is a 4x32 optic, and when it is not powered, it is still completely functional. So when you just look through the optic without turning anything on, you're going to see normal crosshairs, and they might be a little tough to see, but they're here in gray, and then some other additional, farther yardage aiming points going down the center or the vertical portion of the reticle. So when this is not powered, or if you lose battery for some reason, you can still completely use this optic. Obviously, you're going to have to know, you're going to have to play with it for each of those lines. You can't adjust the reticle part. It's a fixed reticle, non-powered, and your 20 yard, it's intended to be sighted in basically the very center at 20 yards. It's also not a very big package size, you guys. So a lot of people were very complimentary at ATA just about how small it is. It is a little heavy. I shouldn't say heavy. It's heavier than just a normal 4x32 speed ring or fixed optic that you might get on a KI bow. And naturally, I mean, it's electronic, it's got a battery, all that type of stuff. That's going to make it heavier, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And the overall size of it really is essentially that of a normal optic. As far as adjusting it, it's going to have, when you very first are sighting it in, you're going to have elevation adjustment. That's this knob right here. And then there's also a windage adjustment. You can't see it in this view, but it's a little silver screw on the other side of the optic for windage. So you're going to basically be able to adjust up, down, left, right, like you would on a traditional optic. They're just not on top of it. There's 3 buttons on the top, and actually you can probably see those better on the website picture here. So these 3 buttons, you've got a power button, pretty self-explanatory, and that too, when the optic is on, tapping that power button will range, and I guess I'll explain that here in a minute. But that is also a tap, is to get a range from it. The middle button is your settings button. I'll explain that here in a second too. And then your last button, it looks like a sun. That's your brightness settings. So powered, what is cool about CERTIS is that it is a traditional optic. Basically, you're looking through glass. You've got a normal reticle, but it's got digital aspects to it. So it is a range-finding optic. And with the range, once calibrated, it's going to project an aiming point along the vertical portion of the reticle for exactly where you should be aiming for a particular distance. Now, calibrating it or getting it kind of all set up, you're going to input 2 things using that little M button. You're going to input your speed, and you're going to input a ballistic coefficient. That's how it is going to figure the trajectory of your arrow for you. Speeds are in 5 feet per second increments. If you have a chronograph, great. The ballistic coefficient, KI did a nice job. They basically gave you, a pretty good bucket to choose from. There's a base one, basically a middle one, and from there you can go up or down. And they did that to really, capture the majority of the arrows that you and I shoot out of crossbows. And I think they did a good job with it. So when you turn it on, and I'm going to draw on this here, when you turn it on, your very center is going to illuminate red, your 20-yard. Then if you hit either tapping that power button up on top or a Bluetooth key fob, or I say key fob, it looks like a key fob, basically a Bluetooth fob. You guys see this right down here? So this you can put anywhere. We zip tied it here to the end of the forend, which is a great spot for it, but it can be just loose in your hand. You could use like a double-sided tape or some other attachment method to locate this wherever you want, but it's not corded, it's Bluetooth, which I think is great. And I kind of thought of it like this forend grip spot's a good one, but I even thought just literally on like a lanyard around my hand for if I'm on a tripod or if I'm resting, just being able to click it and use it in my left hand would be totally fine. So those are the two ways that you take range. And once you have it calibrated, after you take a range, you're going to take a range with that center portion, the 20-yard. You're always going to range with the middle. It is then going to project your aiming point based on your speed and ballistic coefficient. So in this instance here, it says 45 yards. It would then, based on whatever this was set at, it would then project an aiming point for you. Let's just say it's right here, and it would give you a second illuminated red dot. If your target moves or you range a different target, it's going to then move that up or down. And it's going to be capable of projecting that aiming point for you up to 100 yards. So after 100 yards, it's not going to give you an aiming point, but it's capable of just getting ranges much farther than that. So you guys are probably wondering, okay, how do I sight this in? I understand how it works. I like the features. This is really cool, but how exactly would I sight this in? And granted, you guys, I'm going to give you kind of how I would do it if I was given a CERTIS right now to put on one of my crossbows. This isn't any KI, official guidance or anything like that. The optic is so new that the KI hasn't released any of that yet, but it's intuitive enough to me at least that the sighting process should be fairly simple, and I'm just going to give you guys how I would do it to kind of demonstrate how simple it really should be. Key thing here again is you need to know your actual bow and arrow speed. Whatever your setup is, whatever your bow, whatever your arrow is, shoot it through a chronograph. Hopefully you've got one. If you don't, just go visit your local pro shop and ask if you can shoot your setup through a chronograph, or if you got a buddy that's got a chronograph, use that, because having your actual arrow speed is important to make this simple and make this, a true accurate setup for the CERTIS optic. So your bow speed. We're going to start at the base ballistic coefficient setting, and we're going to sight this thing in to start at 20 yards with the center of the reticle. So that very center, we're going to use our windage and our elevation adjustment knobs and the screw to sight this thing in dead on at 20 yards. And then what I'm going to do, for I guess sake of this image here, we'll just say we backed up to 45 yards. I would pick something like that, 40, maybe 50, but just something to give you some range where it is going to, project a dot for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my target here. We're going to just pretend, you guys, this is my big bag target here. I'm going to probably put an aiming point up higher on that bag target, knowing my arrow is going to hit a little bit lower, depending on how far I'm shooting. But let's just say I put something up here at the top, and I'm going to use that 20-yard aiming point for like a piece of tape or something up towards the top of my bag. I'm going to range it. I'm going to know that in this instance, it's 45 yards. Here is where CERTIS, based on my speed and my base ballistic coefficient, says my arrow should hit, but I'm just kind of focusing on aiming at this piece of tape with my 20-yard. Let's say I shoot, and let's say my arrow hits down here. Now, if my arrow hit, let's say it hit a little left or a little right, go ahead. You can make your windage adjustments as well at a further distance, just to dial things in even more. But let's say I hit a little low. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start changing that ballistic coefficient, and I'm going to keep my optic, my 20-yard dot on this piece of tape, and I'm going to change the ballistic coefficient. I'm going to range it again, and I'm going to see if I can find a ballistic coefficient that moves this dot that it projected from here, which it did to start, to here where my arrow hit. And from that point, I mean, that should be, a pretty well calibrated setup. It really is that simple. I'm probably going to move in a little bit closer. I'm going to shoot something like, I don't know, 33 yards, and I'm going to back it up, and I'm going to shoot something over 50, maybe 60 yards, and I'm going to make sure, but I'm going to keep my 20-yard aiming point, my fixed aiming point on, a particular spot, and I'm going to adjust that ballistic coefficient to CERTIS till the actual projected dot is in the exact same spot as where my arrow was hitting. Now, if you can't get it exact, if you're between ballistic coefficients or something, maybe you're a little above or a little below, maybe you've got to adjust that elevation adjustment just a touch to dial things in. But essentially, it's that simple. If you didn't want to do what I'm describing here, where I'm, holding the 20-yard dot on an aiming point and adjusting from there, the other thing you could do, and I didn't mention this before, but the optic is going to tell you what your arrow drop should be at that particular yardage. So what you could also do is you could, shoot, you could get things sighted in at 20 yards. You could take your shot. Let's say you hit right here, and then you could take your whatever 40, 50, 60-yard shot, hit right here, and then you could simply go to your target and measure this distance, and then go back to, your crossbow and CERTIS and adjust that ballistic coefficient until it is giving you the same arrow drop as the value that you measured. That is another way you could do it too. But really, that's it. Knowing your speed, having that initial 20-yard sight in, and then something farther, you should be able to calibrate this optic to essentially anything from 20 to 100 yards. And maybe as you get to extended ranges, maybe there's a couple little tweaks, but it really is that easy, and it really is that it's that cool of that. Once you have that set, you are going to be able to simply push a button, know exactly where your target is, and know exactly where you need to aim with that projected aiming point. All right, so we did get a lot of feedback on CERTIS while at ATA, not only in just people trying it out and seeing how it functions, but also comparing it to, really its closest competitor that is currently out on the market, that of the Burris Oracle X. There was quite a bit of feedback from people comparing it to the Burris, and I want to start you guys with an apology. This is the second take of this video, so some of you guys might be watching it for the second time. Some of that feedback that I shared on my first edit, I take 100% responsibility for not vetting some of that feedback appropriately, and I was incorrect in some of my statements before, particularly revolving around basically the Burris, the digital readout and how it displays the yardage, as well as the wireless remote or wireless fob. Both the CERTIS and the Burris have similar readouts, being horizontal, as well as a Bluetooth wireless remote for you to be able to range and get your projected aiming point. So again, you guys, I apologize on that. There were a couple other points, and I vetted these with a few trusted sources that have the Burris Oracle X that we did here, and I wanted to share with you guys. There were a couple people that basically just commented on the package size compared to the Burris, being that it was smaller. Like I had mentioned before, it really is about the size of just a traditional, 4x32 optic. Again, it is a little heavier than a traditional optic, being that it's electronic and has a battery, but comparing it to the Oracle X, people noted that it was a smaller package size. And the main, one piece of feedback that we also got that I did confirm was the battery location. People had a preference. The Oracle X users that were, testing this particular optic out at ATA noted they liked the battery location on CERTIS better. Now, you can't see it on CERTIS, at least on this picture I'm sharing, but imagine that it's basically right here, just on the other side of the optic. So it's right in the side of it. It's easy to access. The feedback from ATA was that the Oracle X, its battery location can be just difficult at times to remove the battery from the Oracle X. But all in all, you guys, we got very positive feedback on it. Another thing to note from ATA, because many of you are probably wondering, okay, how much does this thing cost? We were told the MSRP for CERTIS was basically $1,000, and retail price was $900. And I also want to point out, you guys are seeing the website for this and you're looking at it and probably thinking, okay, that's not KI's website. It says Maxview Optics. Well, KI is launching, I guess if you would want to call it kind of a sub brand of optics under the name Maxview Optics. So that's where you're going to find information on CERTIS. And I'll put a link down below in the description to this site. And what you guys will find too, if you would like, you can sign up on this Be the First to Know section to basically get notifications on kind of when it's available, and further information that KI will be putting out under the Maxview Optics, sub brand here and on this website. But all in all, you guys, I think KI did an awesome job on CERTIS. It was really fun playing with it. It's super cool. I think this is going to make a lot of people out there, just more lethal in the woods here in 2025, and ultimately a better hunter. Just with, it's so simple to use. It's set up really well. It's not complicated. It wasn't complicated to show at ATA. It wasn't complicated for me to figure out how to use it, and I certainly think that will be the case for everyone else. So I think they did a great job on this optic. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review, and please check out CERTIS and be on the lookout for updates from the maxviewoptics.com website.
For the next product overview, you guys go ahead and check out this video right here, and thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, be a sportsman, make a sportsman.